I know some of you are going to hate me after this video, but I had to make it.
Some shocking new allegations against rapper Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy. The 5th lawsuit in the last month was filed against him.
Sometimes the only thing we're a victim of is our own bad decisions. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. If at any point you want to comment just to help me on the algorithm, but you don't know what to comment, just leave a knife, because for all I know, some of you are going to come for my neck on this one. Also, this video is sponsored by Red Pill Threads. If you're not familiar with Red Pill Threads is a new brand that's designed specifically for people that go against the grain. Because for some reason, social media, big tech, mainstream society has made it so some people are supposed to be deemed voiceless. If you say something that goes against the grain, there's a tendency for everybody to shut you down. And when you wear something by Red Pill Threads, or you have a coffee mug by Red Pill Threads, other like-minded people can see you and be like, hey, maybe me and this person would have something in common. So if you like the shirt I'm wearing right now, or you feel similar to the way that I just described, maybe check out their website and see if there's anything there that suits you. I mean, I know that Red Pill Threads has made it much easier for me to be able to record and upload what it is I actually want to record and upload. So that has taken a huge load off my shoulders, and to me really is them putting their money where their mouth is. So I'm definitely proud and happy to have Red Pill Threads as a sponsor. Red Pill Threads also aims to help end child trafficking. They donate 10% of their proceeds to Operation Underground Railroad, which is an organization that specifically helps to fight child trafficking. So if you want to feel good about a purchase and you want to be able to attract people that are like-minded and you want to be able to say things without actually having to come out and say them, they're probably the brand for you. Go to redpillthreads.com. And don't forget to use promo code THAI, T-H-A-I, in all caps, at checkout for 10% off. That's THAI, T-H-A-I, in all caps at checkout for 10% off. Go to redpillthreads.com.
And bringing this latest lawsuit says she was only 17 when she was a victim of gang by Combs and his associates.
Okay, so here's the deal. A 5th accuser has come forward to accuse Diddy and his crew of SA. And I'm going to start by saying I do not at all support SA. I do not at all support DV or kids being places that they shouldn't be. But also, as a kid that put myself a lot of places I shouldn't have been, I do think that I can offer some unique perspective on this particular case and let you guys know why sometimes I think that we have to look at these things with a discerning eye. We can't just say, yeah, I believe you, and yeah, your story totally adds up, when it really sometimes doesn't. And I know that there is a tendency to want to dogpile on Diddy, and I don't blame anybody for that, because Diddy has been accused of some horrible things in the past. Do I think that the Cassie situation is a completely clear-cut and clean situation? I don't at all. I'll make a whole video about Cassie and her accusations, because I have a lot to say on that one. But as far as this particular situation goes, this is its own separate thing. This is one particular accuser, and I want to tell you about the questions I have and see if maybe you have the same questions, maybe you have opinions, maybe you're going to hate me after this video. I'm not sure. But I want to know how honest she was being in the way that she told her story and the way she conducted herself back at the time of the incident, which the incident happened 20 years ago. And I've got to be honest, I have a problem with that too. When people come forward after 20 years, I sometimes feel like we need to remember regret does not equal trauma. The fact that maybe you didn't like the way you were conducting yourself back in the day and now you've turned it around and you're a different person, or it didn't lead where you wanted it to lead, does not all of a sudden mean that you deserve any kind of compensation or that anybody necessarily did anything wrong to you. Sometimes you do wrong to yourself and then you regret that later, and the person that you're really mad at is yourself, but you obviously can't sue yourself and you probably don't have the kind of money that Diddy has, so of course it makes more sense to go after Diddy. So let's listen to the story and we'll stop it when we need to.
According to the lawsuit, in 2003, the victim, going by Jane Doe, was a 17-year-old 11th grader residing in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. At the time, Diddy was 34 years old, twice the age of Miss Doe, and one of the most well-known and influential music artists of all time. A decade earlier, Diddy founded Bad Boy and installed his longtime friend Pierre into the role of president. At the time, Diddy had many connections to Michigan, including, among others, to the Black Mafia family, BMF, an illicit substance trader and money laundering organization that is rumored to have seeded Bad Boy. Accordingly, upon information and belief, Diddy associates, including Pierre and the third assailant, spent significant time in and around Detroit, Michigan. On one evening between the spring and fall of 2003, Miss Doe was out with friends. It was not uncommon for her and her friends to frequent bars and lounges in the Detroit area.
That's the first place I'm going to stop, because she's 17 years old and they're presenting her as this child. But it was not uncommon for her to be at bars and lounges in the Detroit area. As a person myself that started going to clubs when I was 16 years old because I got an ID through a guy that I was dating that was 24 years old, and he let me use his information so I could get an ID. I can tell you that sometimes I would not tell people my age if I wanted to hook up with them and I knew that there was a chance that they were not going to be into the fact that I was underage. Is that right for me to have done that? Most definitely not. But at the same time, was this girl honest with them about her age, and at what point did she divulge her actual age? Because the other thing that would happen with me when I was younger was, because I was there on a fake ID, and she probably was there on a fake ID too. And if you're there on a fake ID, you don't want to tell the people that you hook up with or that you party with your actual age, because they could get mad at you and tell the bouncers your age, and then you'll get kicked out of the bar. So this is the first red flag to me in this person's story. How honest were you being with the people that were around you, including Pierre, about the fact that you were 17 years old? Did he actually know that at the time, or did he think he was interacting with a grown woman? Because I think that for most people, if they meet you in a bar, they will assume that you're over the age of 21. And I think that that's a logical and reasonable conclusion to draw from meeting somebody in a bar that is 21 and over. And for the people that want to be like, well, Diddy is a terrible person and he deserves this, maybe so. I'm not at all disputing that. I'm not at all trying to dispute the fact that Diddy has mistreated all of his artists. I'm not thinking that Diddy is not in line for karma. And I also do understand that sometimes our karma doesn't always come directly from the people that we violated. So I'm not trying to imply that Diddy has clean hands here and doesn't deserve to get in some trouble. I'm just saying that when it comes to stories like this, we should be able to ask certain questions, and we should be able to be like, okay, were you presenting yourself as a little girl at that time, or were you presenting yourself as an adult and somebody actually bought into the fact that you were an adult and then you didn't like the way adults get treated?
Certain of Miss Doe's friends were well connected with people in the music industry. On the evening in question, Miss Doe was with friends in a lounge when she was approached by who she later learned was Pierre. Pierre was with his own friends, including the third assailant. Pierre, the third assailant, and their friends were dressed in suits. Pierre repeatedly complimented Miss Doe's appearance, saying that she was hot, among other things. He then began talking about his self-described best friend and brother, Diddy. Specifically, Pierre continually stated that Diddy would love to meet Miss Doe. Pierre even called Diddy and put Miss Doe on the line. Diddy told Miss Doe that he would love to meet her, and that she should accompany Pierre to New York City in a private jet. Shortly thereafter, Pierre directed Miss Doe to go with him into the bathroom at the lounge. Once inside the bathroom, Pierre began to smoke nose candy from what appeared to be an aluminum can. After he finished smoking, Pierre suddenly demanded that Miss Doe to conduct oral S on him. After essaying Miss Doe,
so then they say he directed her to give oral S, is the way that they phrase it, which we all know what that means. So was he thinking that she was an adult? And also, what did she go to the bathroom with him for? Were they in there to party together, and that's the part that she's leaving out? Because it doesn't seem like there would be any other reason that I would go to the bathroom with somebody else. And I'm not saying that that means that she deserves SA or anything like that. I'm just saying I think that the reason that they refer to it as SA in this particular situation, and not just one person performing an act on another person, is because she was 17 at the time. But if he didn't know that she was 17 at the time and is working under the assumption that she is 21 years old, and he thinks he's just asking a grown woman to perform a particular act on him, then does she not have responsibility in misrepresenting herself in this particular situation?
Pierre directed her to accompany him, the third assailant, and a third member of their group to an airport in Pontiac, Michigan, where Signature, a fixed-base operator, had prepared a private jet to take the four of them to New York City. Upon information and belief, the private jet landed at Teterboro Airport. Upon departing the jet, two black SUVs were awaiting the group.
Okay, why did we have to mention that they're black SUVs? Are we saying that white SUVs would have behaved any better?
Miss Doe got into an SUV with Pierre, and the third assailant and the other member of the group went in the second SUV. The SUVs brought the group to Diddy's house recording studio, a recording studio and hangout owned and operated by Diddy and Bad Boy. When Miss Doe arrived, she was escorted into the building, where she distinctly remembers seeing a sign for the company, Technicolor. Upon entering the studio, Miss Doe first encountered Diddy. Diddy asked Miss Doe to sit on his lap to take a picture.
Now again, I have to know, because they don't say that at any point she divulged to them that she was actually 17 years old. Did she at any point divulge this information to them? Because it just doesn't seem clear on when she told them what her age was. It seems almost like she's trying to get over, and I feel like that does a disservice to people that are actual victims and actually are naive to what's going on. Because I can say that even though I don't think in the instances where people actually knew my age and knew that I was underage, because there definitely were those people, that those people definitely did something wrong. But when it came to the people that had no idea what my age was and just thought that I was 24, and not just thought that I was 24, but had asked me how old I was, and because I didn't want to get busted for my fake ID, or I didn't want them to not want to hook up with me, I said I was 24. Are those people guilty of anything? Because in my opinion, they're not. But at the same time, if it's worth some money to me, maybe they are. And maybe I need to sue them for this trauma, because pretty much all of them had money. But it's true. But on a serious note, is it fair for me to go back and start, like, say this applies to Arizona, which is where I was living when I was younger. Is it okay for me to go back and demand money from these people, saying that they did something to me that they didn't even realize that they did to me? And were they doing it to me, or was I doing it to myself?
Diddy, Pierre, and the third assailant began to ply Miss Doe, a 17-year-old child at the time.
Now, you can't be an adult at the bar and then a child when people are giving you drugs. It's just not the way it works. I know I did drugs with a lot of people too when I was in that phase of my life, and I never considered it to be them plying me with drugs. That's the other thing that I always hear people say, that people plied other people with drugs. And it's like, did they ply with drugs, or did they just offer you drugs and you said okay? And is it a bad thing for people to give you drugs? Because again, there's a lot of people, even to this day, that I should be able to hold up on charges if that's what we're saying, because a lot of people have given me drugs and continue to offer me drugs to this day. At what point do we go from y'all were just partying to you're being plied with drugs? What's the difference between you making a decision to ingest some drugs and you being plied with drugs?
While the evening became a blur, Miss Doe does recall Diddy, Pierre, and the third assailant hitting on her and touching her inappropriately. This new lawsuit is filed under the New York City statute against gender-motivated V. Like several other SA statutes, it has recently been extended to allow suits that would otherwise be barred by the statute of limitations. As alleged in the complaint, defendants preyed on a vulnerable high school teenager as part of an S-trade scheme.
That's what I'm saying, though. Did they know that she was a vulnerable high school teenager? And I'm not saying this excuses actual SA, because it does not. But also, as a person that's done a fair amount of drugs, I know that there are particular drugs that will make me... It's just the way that it works. And when I was on those drugs back in the day, I would actively seek out multiple partners in some cases. And in some cases, the next day, I would feel dirty about some of the things that I had done. And I would feel incredibly used. But I never felt like anybody had forced me to do anything. I was just on the drugs And yeah, you could say those people took advantage of the situation, but in some cases, the people that I was hooking up with didn't even know that I was on those particular drugs or didn't bother to ask. As far as they knew, I was just a guy that wanted to hook up with them, and we hooked up. So I was drugged and I was underage and I was doing the same things that this girl might have been doing. And I know some women and men that even in their sober state of mind are highly sexual and want to do different things. So if everybody's partying and you assume everybody's an adult and you're all in the same state of mind, at what point does one become a and the other just stay us all partying together? Because like I said, I have regretted things the next day that I chose to do, but I never saw them as anybody forcing me or literally taking advantage of the fact that I was on these particular drugs. That's a lie. One time. There was one time, and I never made a deal of it. But yeah, come to think of it, that was a lie. And I still have to admit I had a good time, even the one time that I felt kind of like I had been taken advantage of. And I felt like live and learn. I need to be smarter about the way that I do things. But like I said, I did have a good time, so I'm not going to pretend that I didn't enjoy the acts that we did, but they bamboozled me. One day I'll tell you guys the story.
That involved plying her with substances and intoxication and transporting her by private jet to New York City, where she was gang-arred by the 3 individual defendants at Mr. Combs' studio.
I agree that if that was what actually happened, then they definitely should face charges and everybody should be in trouble if they did gang-ar her. But are we actually using the R word because it was actual R, or are we using the R word because we're running off the fact that she was underage and that automatically makes it statutory R? That's what I want to know in this particular instance. And I feel like if we're going to talk about these things and especially try to litigate them or see them be litigated, I think that these are questions that we should be able to ask, and I don't think we should be shamed for asking these questions, and I don't think people should get mad at us for saying, maybe I want a little bit of clarification on this if we're supposed to hold people to these charges, because you could argue that it's just civil, so it's money that she's after, and that while it does inconvenience you, it doesn't ruin your entire life. But then if we're going to start getting to the criminal part, at what point does the person that's misrepresenting themselves as being older actually have to take accountability for the fact that they hadn't given the other party or parties all the information they needed to even say, yeah, you're not for me?
Wigdor said in a statement, "The depravity of these abhorrent acts has, not surprisingly, scarred our client for life."
Scarred for life. Scarred for life by them or scarred for life by you? Because from all indications, you were presenting yourself as an adult. And I know some people are going to say I'm victim blaming. I'm not victim blaming. I'm just asking these questions because I think they are very important when it comes to being expected to take a side on these kinds of things. And like I said, if I hadn't been in that position myself as a kid and doing those things myself, I probably wouldn't have these questions, and I'd just be like the average person and be like, oh yeah, this most definitely is the kind of thing that should definitely be prosecuted as them taking advantage of a 17-year-old. But so many people wouldn't know that I was 17, 16. They just would have assumed I was 24, like I had told them. So who damaged who? Did you damage yourself or did they damage you? Now again, if there was R word involved, SA involved, I get it. But are we using SA and R word because that's what actually happened? Or are we using the technical terms, which is what they always describe as when it's statutory, which is a person that's underage engaging in those types of acts?
As a result of being essayed by Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and the third assailant, Miss Doe suffered significant emotional distress.
I will 100% admit, I spent a lot of my life being very toxic because of the involvement I had with men that were in their 30s and 40s when I was a teenager. So I can understand how you would describe it as distress and emotional problems throughout your entire life. But again, we have to go back to, was that something that somebody did to me, or was it something that I did to myself through the choices choices that I made when I was underage.
And feels of shame that have plagued her life and personal relationships for 20 years.
See right there, emotional distress and feels of shame have plagued her life and personal relationships, which to me translates to she's probably been a very difficult person in a lot of her relationships because of some of the trauma that she sustained when she was younger. But you have to ask yourself, was that trauma put upon me, or did I bring that trauma on myself by misrepresenting myself as being a particular age when I wasn't that age, which led to me mixing with people that I shouldn't have been mixing with? Because my boyfriends when I was 16 and 17 tended to be 30 and 40. Like, that's just kind of the range, and nobody younger than, of course, 21. So I know that a lot of the stuff that was put on me by especially the older guys, like the 30s and especially the 40s, because they have so many problems, and especially back then because we weren't allowed to be out and gay. And so gay men back in those days tended to be some of the most mentally unhealthy because they had never had a chance to really adjust to society and there were no role models. So when I was younger, 40 was a lot more emotionally stunted in the gay community, and so I got mistreated by older guys a lot and emotionally, and that led to me not being the most well-balanced person for most of my adult life. And only now am I really starting to get it in check and starting to have a healthier outlook. But that is really in a lot of ways my own fault. So while I would like to blame other people and I would like to say I'm going to sue this person and I'm going to sue that person and this person really deserves to face these particular consequences, there's also part of me that feels like this was the situation that I left myself in. And I know some people are like, where's the parents? Sometimes your parents have no control over you after a certain age, aside from getting the police involved, and they don't want you to necessarily have a record or go to juvenile hall. So they kind of have to let you just do what you do, which in some cases you'll lie to your parents too and be like, I'm going to spend the night at a friend's house. And really you're not spending the night at a friend's house. You're going to fly to New York to hang out with Diddy in his studio. And your parents may truly believe that you're hanging out at a friend's house. Now, you could say that the parents should drive by or the parents should do a surprise inspection of the house that you're supposed to be hanging out at, but that's not very realistic. I think some parents just trust their kids and don't want to have that kind of relationship where they have to be making sure that they're where they're supposed to be. They told them where they're supposed to be. That's where they trust they're going. And so I don't necessarily blame the parents in all of these instances. Now, when it comes to the younger kids that are in the industry, that's where I blame the parents when they're 5, 9 years old. The Michael Jackson stuff, which I still don't know if I believe the Michael Jackson story just from Wade Robson and some of the others and the way that that went down. But honestly, when it comes to parents leaving their young kids that really don't know any better and rely on you to take care of them, that's where I blame the parents. But when it gets to teenage years, and I say that again because that's something that I went through with my parents, at a point they were calling the police on me. But then it was gonna lead me to a life of basically being in and out of the court systems, because the more they call the police, in some cases, the worse you get. And I was definitely getting worse. So at a point they were like, okay, we're not going to call the police anymore on you. We're just going to run this on an honor system kind of thing. You got to behave yourself if we're going to be letting you be out like that. And I don't blame my parents for that because they really were doing their best and they didn't know how to navigate around it. So when it comes to the parents argument, I don't necessarily think that that's the way to go at this either. But you guys can let me know what you guys think down in the comments. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.